interesting. We've talked many times about Phil Mushnick and his column in the New York Post, and he wrote a very interesting column today in the repartee between the umpires and the catcher.
Saw that, yeah. Right.
You saw that, yeah. I thought that was very interesting, the way they handled it, and when the umpire was hit by a pitch or when Ladd was hit by a pitch and so forth. And there was a lot of communication. There's no question about that between the catchers and the umpires, because, as they point out, when you put those tools on, you have a little sympathy for the other guy. So for anybody that would like to read a little bit about what goes on between the umpires and the catcher during the course of a ball game, pick up today's Post, and Phil Mushnick sort of has a third of a column on the repartee between the two men.
So we'll see if we can get Phil on this show one of these days, Don. We have a way now we can conference him in, so we'll work on that. It would be fun to have him join us on this program.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Just want to say hello to some of the other people joining us in the chat box. We have, of course, G-Man and Kevin Knessa joining us. Rest4Q joined us. How are you, Rest4Q? Thanks for being with us. Where are you watching today? If you want to let us know that'd be great. And again, you can join us if you're not registered. You don't have to register. You just have to sign in, and you can join us on the chat box. Also, if you want to beam in and join us on the air, you can do that as well. There's a little picture of a mouth below us on the screen there. Just click on that, and our screener will put you on the air. As long as you have a webcam or just a web microphone, you can do that as well if you just want to do audio only. Now let's move over to the other team in New York, which is again going through some hard times. Looked like they had going there for a while, but now they've fallen back in the pack again. I think they're only one game over 500, about 6.5 out. They had their Mets Hall of Fame inductions over the weekend, and you and I kind of joked about that before we went on. Interesting class that went in, right?
Yeah, it was. Doc Gooden, of course, and Dal Strawberry, and of course Cashin was an outstanding executive in both Baltimore and New York during the championship years in New York and during the championship years in Baltimore. And of course Davey Johnson, who was the manager of the team that really, I guess, is really the highlight of the entire Met organization for ever since it became the Met team. So yes, they did. They had an interesting induction into the Mets Hall of Fame, and as Dal Strawberry said, because of his own weaknesses, he's not going to be considered for the Hall of Fame, but he's very proud to be in the New York Hall of Fame.
Seems like Strawberry has turned his life around. I saw a nice piece. I believe they did it on might have been ESPN. I'm not sure. Maybe it was one of the news shows where now he has kind of dedicated his life to helping with autistic children. He lives out in St. Louis now. His current wife now has gotten him kind of straightened out. I know he's had the drug problems, obviously. Went through a bout with cancer as well. Was in jail for a time. But it seems like Dal Strawberry, of those two players, he and Doc Gooden, Strawberry's the one that's on the right track.
Yeah, Doc's still struggling a little bit. Major stories about him last week. Most people probably saw in the paper, and split with his. I'm not sure whether it's his wife or what, but on the hook a little bit for child support. So he's still in a little bit of trouble. But you're right. Strawberry has sort of straightened himself out. He's in partners with a fellow that are going to open up a restaurant only about 5 minutes from Shea Stadium. It opens up next week. They had some of the introductory ceremonies there over this last weekend, but it actually officially opens to the public next week. But it's only 5 or 7 minutes from the new city park, so it should be a very good endeavor for Dal Strawberry.
I guess strawberry shortcake has to be on the dessert menu, right, Don?
Pardon me?
Strawberry shortcake has to be on the menu for dessert, I would think, there.
Yeah, I guess that's right. Let me just throw one other thing before we get back to baseball, sure, because this is of interest to the New Yorkers as well as the Philadelphians, as well as our good friend Tommy Gilbert down there with the Lightning. Chicago, I don't know if you saw it or not, could not, because of the salary cap, the Blackhawks could not sign the rookie goaltender that was so successful last year. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not the Flyers, or whether the Tampa Bay, or who the Rangers, who really wants to go out and get a goaltender, because of the cap, the Blackhawks couldn't sign him. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, I had that on my list to talk about a little bit later, but good that you brought it up now. Marty Turco was signed today, former Dallas Stars goalie by the Blackhawks, but Antti Niemi was the goaltender for the Blackhawks. Had a great season. Obviously, he went to the Stanley Cup. I think he has goals against for something like 2.57 for the whole season, and the playoffs even better. And they gave him an arbitration buyout. I think it was $2.75 million. But right now, the Chicago Blackhawks are unloading a lot of players, which I don't think the fans there are going to be too happy about.
Well, they say they're over the cap, and they couldn't sign him, so it's going to be interesting now. They signed that backup goalie that you just indicated, but it's going to be very, very interesting now to see what happens, because there are so many clubs in the National Hockey League that need goaltending, and he certainly earned his spurs both in the playoffs as well as the finals, Stanley Cup final, winning the Stanley Cup. So, boy, I would think he would be very much in demand by teams like Philadelphia and like Tampa Bay and some of the others. I mean, everybody needs goaltending, and he certainly proved he can do it.
Yeah, the Wirtz family, which has owned the Blackhawks for many years, I believe the father was kind of known as not wanting to spend a lot of money. I think the son took over 2 years ago and started to bring back some of the legendary Blackhawk players like Bobby Hull, Stan Mikita, Tony Esposito to get him back in the fold. Did a good marketing job, and of course built the winner. Of course, our colleague down here, Scotty Bowman, had a lot to do with that. His son, the GM, and now Scotty, a scout for the Blackhawks. But right now, after they win, it's almost like, not quite as bad, but almost like what the Marlins did, Huizenga, unloading a lot of great players after they won the World Series a few years ago.
Well, you and I chatted about it a few times on different shows, and that's the fact that Scotty normally sits right behind us in the press box every time we go to a game, and so we have a great chance to chat with him. And, of course, Tommy is associated with the team, so we have a chance to talk to Tommy as well. And you're right. I mean, he does a lot of scouting for the Blackhawks, but his son's the general manager, and every string that he pulled last year turned out to be the right string.
Yeah, did a great job, and a type of team very similar to the New Jersey Devils when they were in their great run of winning the Cups. No huge stars, really. They just played that tough, almost like that left-wing lock, neutral zone trap kind of play, but the great goaltending, good defense, and solid offense, and they just kind of grind you down. That's what they did last year.
Boy, that was the story of the Devils all the time. I mean, they had that very formidable defense, and you had a tough time getting through. I mean, they just take you out at the blue line. You never really got an opportunity to get very many good shots. And I'll tell you, the Devils, for those 4 or 5 years, were just a team that was almost indestructible.
Getting back to the Lightning for a minute, since we talked last week, the Lightning have brought in a new CEO. Of course, Jeff Vinik, the new owner of the Lightning, bought the team several months ago and has done a great job. He hired Stevie Yzerman to be the GM, who's made some good moves. I think he's improved the ball club, but now you have Todd Lywicki, who's had a very interesting long career in sports. I think he was last with a couple of teams out in the Seattle area, also with the Minnesota Wild in the NHL, to kind of come in and run the day-to-day operations of the team. The Lywicki family has had a history of running many sports teams. So I think it's a good hire. At least it seems like it is.
You know, just a sidebar on that, it was interesting tonight. I was in the sports shows, and I don't know if you've heard it or not. It just seemed unbelievable to me. The Miami team, the Marlins have, not the Marlins, but
the Panthers? Florida Panthers?
Since they came up with the big three, signed everybody, they've sold out every ticket for every home game. Maybe you've heard this story.
Oh, you're talking about the Miami Heat, the basketball.
Yeah, and they fired everybody. Everybody in the ticket office, everybody.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they fired everybody. So we don't need anybody. We sold all the tickets, so we don't need anybody in the ticket office.
Boy.
We don't need. They fired everybody today.